Handmade Crutches. Hadiya took one look at the blood flowing from her left hand, and her heartbeat accelerated. She bit her lip, shut her eyes, and pulled the jagged tip of the large splintered piece of wood from her hand. She didn't want to cry or scream in front of her 4 daughters or her son Khaled, especially when they were already yelling and pacing the floor erratically as soon as they saw the blood. "Calm down. It's nothing serious," Hadiya said. "Mama, what are you talking about?" "Look at the puddle of blood on the floor," Zakaya, the youngest daughter, said with tears streaming down her cheeks. Hadiya forced a smile. "Get me a towel, please." Zakia jumped up as if she'd been stung by a hornet and came back with an old worn-out towel. Worn towels were all they had because it was all they could afford. Farah, Marwa, and Roa gathered around their mother like bees swarming around their queen. They wrapped her hand in the towel as tightly as they could, but the wound was deep and the towel was quickly soaked in blood. Farah looked at Khaled and screamed at him through her tears. "It's all your fault. If Mama was not making new crutches for you, she wouldn't have cut her hand like this." Hadiya felt a lump rise in her throat. Choking back a cry, she said, "No, darling. It is not Khaled's fault. Please don't blame him for something he didn't do. I should not have tried to use the butcher knife, but I don't have a saw." She glanced at Khaled apologetically. Her son was 14 years old and shorter than all his peers because he had been born with a congenital bone disorder. The tension of his muscles put stress on his soft bones, resulting in bowed arms and legs. He was not able to get around without crutches since he couldn't bend his knees. He had a very large head relative to his small body, and a triangular-shaped face because of overdevelopment of his cranial bones and underdevelopment of the bones in his face. His shoulders were prominent because the old crutches he had been using were too long for him. They were handmade and of different lengths, which caused his left shoulder to be higher than the right one. However, after the crutches mysteriously fell from the 3rd-floor balcony and were reduced to splinters, Hadiya thought if she could buy proper crutches, it would be healthier for him. Unfortunately, there was not enough money for such things. "Look at all this blood," Farah said, still sobbing. Marwa looked at Farah and said, "This morning I went with Mama to our grandfather's shop to ask for money to buy new crutches. But he said our father hasn't sent him any money for a long time. We must be patient with your father. He went to Dubai to earn money to pay off his debt. Soon he will come back to live with us again," Hadiya said, reminding herself as well as her daughters of the reason she was making the crutches. "Why did grandfather not just give us money?" Roa asked. "He is a successful merchant and always brags in front of everyone that he is the godfather of the merchants." She was holding her mom's wounded hand gently with both hands, as if she was cradling a newly born bird. "That poor old man has 3 families to feed," Hadiya said, doing a poor job of convincing herself that her father-in-law was not able to help his indebted son because of his 3 wives, each one living in a big house. "You must go to the hospital, Mama. Your hand needs stitches," Farah said, wiping her moist eyes with her sleeve. "Okay, let me finish these crutches, and my hero, Khaled, will accompany me." Hadiya smiled at Khaled. It was out of the question for her to leave the apartment without a man to accompany her. With the help of her 4 daughters, Hadiya finished making the crutches, then helped Khaled to stand up and tuck them under his arms. She didn't see a smile on his face, but that's okay, she thought. Who would be happy getting handmade crutches instead of professionally made ones? Getting dressed would only take her a few minutes. She put on the only coat she owned, which was old and shiny from the years of washing and ironing. She covered her hair with a fading black scarf, slightly older than the coat, slipped her feet into her only pair of shoes, and she was ready. The process of dressing Khaled usually took over 30 minutes, but fortunately she had dressed him that morning soon after he woke up. Dressing him with only one good hand would have been challenging. She wouldn't allow her daughters to help their brother to dress and undress. It wouldn't be proper. Khaled had a severe case of hamato due to wearing shoes that were too small all the time. The rotten smell of his feet was unbearable no matter how long he soaked them. Her neighbor, Fatih, advised her to put salt with the water to help reduce the smell. But unfortunately, Hadiya couldn't afford to buy extra salt. She didn't mind the smell so much. He is, after all, her beloved son. Her daughters helped her remove the blood-soaked towel and wrap her hand with a clean one, which became stained with blood immediately. She refused to let any of them accompany her and Khaled because she didn't want them to interrupt their studies. Taking a taxi was out of the question. She could not afford such luxury. Riding the public bus would be torture, but she didn't have a choice. Khaled would never be able to hobble the 5 kilometer to the hospital. She thought how lucky she was because the public hospitals in Syria are free. She thanked God for this blessing. The knocking of the new handmade crutches seemed louder than usual as she and Khaled descended the steps and stepped out on the street. But of course they would be louder. The wood of the crutches had not softened from use yet, like the old ones. For a fraction of a second she wondered if Khaled was angry with her. But no, she erased that sinful thought from her mind immediately. She had brought up her children based on the precepts of unconditional love and forgiveness. He wouldn't do that. Hadiya and Khaled reached the bus stop. Actually, just a spot where people usually stood to wait for buses since the buses would stop wherever and whenever a passenger waved them down. A crowd of people, mostly men, were standing there ready to jump aboard a still-moving bus as it passed because the buses never stopped completely. The drivers tapped the brakes but keep moving forward at a lower speed to allow passengers either to jump from the street onto the bus or from the bus to the street. For most of the waiting people, that was okay, but for Hadiya and Khaled, this was extremely challenging. Many buses came by, but each time she wasn't able to jump and pull Khaled with her. The buses slowed several meters ahead of where they stood, but each time Khaled couldn't hobble fast enough. Finally, a bus slowed directly in front of them, and with a rapidly beating heart she grabbed Khaled's hand and they both jumped for the bus's open doorframe. To Hadiya's embarrassment, they ended up sprawled on the filthy floor of the bus. A couple of men offered her helping hands, but she just thanked them and pulled herself up. She was not allowed to touch strange men, but she was happy to see them helping Khaled back to his feet. Her left hand was bleeding more now, along with an added burning sensation. The bus was crowded and all the people stared at them wide-eyed, especially at Khaled. To prevent him from seeing the scared looks in the people's eyes, she kept looking at her beloved Khaled with eyes full of affection and a sweet smile. His ruddy complexion shone like a flame out of sensitivity. The parts of his eyes that would normally be white were blue due to his medical condition. This caused people to stare and shiver. But Hadiya loved him and saw him as a most handsome son. When the bus driver got a look at Hadiya's bloody hand, he brought the bus to a complete stop in front of the city hospital out of sympathy. Khaled was able to get down on his own and save them from the embarrassment of flopping on the ground again. She was so grateful for this driver. She looked up at the sky and prayed for him to get whatever he desired. As they went in through the emergency gate, they found the place teeming with scores of people just like them. People stared at Khaled less now, though, since everyone there had their own personal calamities to distract them from the problems of others. Hadiya and Khaled spent a few hours waiting for their turn. The doctor who finally attended them was very young, barely graduated, or maybe he was still a medical student. It didn't matter. He was like a healing balm with his friendly smile, positive attitude, and sweet words. She forgot about the pain in her hand and the suffering of waiting so long in this dingy place. Her hand was stitched up and they began their journey back home. This time, She asked Khaled to grasp her left arm firmly above the elbow as she intended to use her right hand to grab hold of something when she jumped on the bus, so she would be able to pull Khaled along with her. A few buses passed before she was able to jump aboard one. She grabbed the metal bar near the door and pulled Khaled with all her strength. The bus driver realized the difficulty of their mission too late, and when he pressed the brakes to stop, she and Khaled crashed into the front transom, and one of the crutches shattered under the weight of Khaled's body. A few passengers stopped to help her and Khaled to their feet. She looked at Khaled and smiled. "Don't worry. I will make a new one for you as soon as we reach home. For now, we have the other crutch. It will be enough if you hold on to my arm." Khaled didn't say anything. She wished she understood the emotions raging in his head, since his eyes showed no positive feelings. All the way back to their apartment, she avoided the stares of people by keeping her smile focused on Khaled. She couldn't understand why he continued to avoid eye contact. Maybe he's embarrassed by my old clothes, she thought. She couldn't take the shattered crutch with her when they got off the bus, as she had only one good hand and she needed that to help Khaled hobble home. This time the driver stopped the bus completely and allowed them to get down safely, for which she was very grateful. Their home was 4 blocks away from the main road, and on the journey back, her arm hurt from where Khaled was holding on. His grip was so tight and strong, which caused her enormous pain, her arm almost pierced by his nails. She didn't know why he was using all of his strength. Is he afraid to fall, or is he afraid I'll hurry home and leave him? His hobbling was so slow. That's when she heard Khaled sobbing. Stopping in her tracks, she bent down so her face was level with his. He was crying as if he was carrying the sorrow of the world on his shoulders. Cheeks wet with tears, he looked at her sorrowfully. She hugged him tightly, then, unable to hold back her own tears, she too started to cry. The shoulder of his shirt soon became wet from her tears. "I didn't mean to put you through all of this suffering." Khaled's words, heavy with sorrow and pain, burst from his lips between gasping sobs. "Mama, why? Why are you so good to everyone, even the people who are not good to you? I love you so much, Mama, and I want to protect you. I want to hold you in my heart, keep you safe from all the cruelties of life." His words made Hadiya's day, and she promptly forgot all about her pain. Their sobbing drew stares from many passers-by, but she didn't care.
Hadiya mysteriously passed away a few years later. The details are in the murder mystery novel Daughter of Damascus.